I mean, we dealt quite a lot with sales marketing. I think then that's split between two. I think we'll come back to it as we explore the conversation further. But I do want to pick up back on that personalization topic. Yeah, I guess the big question for me, and I'd invite all of you to answer it in your own way, is personalization really viable in B2B marketing? Can you really get to a high level of personalized marketing and sales in B2B? And if so, what do we need to do differently to get there? And I'll start with Jack.
Yeah, thank you. In theory, yes, obviously, but that's a slightly, it's a slightly glib way of looking at it. We know that we can, for example, understand what someone's IP address is when they're coming to look at your website, and you know if they're from company X, and company X is very interested in in a certain industry, and you've got the right sort of content within your big blocks of content that you can serve them that stuff relevantly. If they're on your database, GDPR notwithstanding, you can maybe even greet them by name or send them stuff that's pertinent to what they're doing at that time. For me, another aspect of the personalization that does matter, and I think we could focus on more usefully than we already do, which is enabling peer-to-peer communication. Mm-hmm. And so whether that's one of your databases is going to be at an event, or we know that they have a connection with someone, you can facilitate that, personally or in a personal way by allowing them or giving them the equipment to do a good job and be, have the right tools and information at their disposal to make that an interesting, benefit outcome-led encounter.
And I think that's one of the keys for me. I mean, you're right, inbound marketing, you can, I think, have a degree of personalization, but there's always, it feels like to me, there's going to be a limit, yeah. But outbound, I guess the outreach we do to the customers we know want to buy from us, I think that can be more personalized. Anyone have a view on where they've seen that work, or how are you finding that personalization piece working for you?
So I think if you go into sales and marketing actually in the mindset of it being a value exchange, then that actually starts to really shape the way that you think about how you present your marketing. So for example, if I have the reach to be able to do a survey into a particular industry around a particular business challenge that we know is a factor in that industry, and then I can build a digital front end that allows you to be able to map your situation into that data and get some sort of insight, that's actually just genuinely useful. Now, technically it's marketing, and then you pass to a salesperson, but actually what you're doing is providing a huge amount of value to somebody who's in a hard job who needs some help, right? That's the way that I think about it. So at that point, the inbound and outbound, that's just a channel conversation. And it's more about saying, well, rather than just kind of pumping more and more content out through the digital channels and being able to put my name on it, it's more about saying, well, let's use the insights that you have about me and my challenges and give me something that's actually genuinely valuable that would make me want to pick up the phone. And then the whole conversation is different right from the outset.
And again, I would agree, that sort of individual, an individual within an organization and understanding them. How far do you take that? How far do you want to take that? How do you then follow it through in a way that doesn't feel like stalking?
There's a fine line, isn't there, between skilled marketing and stalking, really. I think you're right. This whole sort of buzz about the me economy, you know, and we all respond very well when we're just called out by name. It's the very, very small things make a difference in our language, in our name. If you've got a difficult surname like mine in a call center, when they spell it right, pronounce it right, that makes a huge difference, right? But I mean, some of the things, I guess, with a kind of coming into this with a SaaS marketing type of background, I guess it's about, again, that very sort of logical breaking down of that whole customer journey, back to basics again. And what I've encountered is a lot of people focus on the acquisition piece. Mm-hmm. Let's get more. Mm-hmm. And actually, in my experience, looking very carefully at which part is either broken or where there's friction or it's just not working, I've had huge success at that sort of point of activation / monetization, because you've done all the hard work to get the customer through the door. Now let's give them the right tools, the right information to actually activate and start monetizing. So it's concentrating on the right part of that journey. And so often I find that the sales and marketing machine is really geared up, front-ended around acquisition, which is still really, really important. But actually it's much less risky and much more fruitful to work in a slightly different area. So,
and I guess this picks up, I think, a bit on something Antonia mentioned earlier about the funnel and diverting resources, investment and focus towards what's already in the funnel rather than getting stuff into the funnel. And I think, any thoughts you have, Lucio, on that, re-emphasis on whether it's through account-based marketing or one-to-one marketing or whatever you want to call it, any changes you're seeing in the way companies think about, where we invest our scarce resources?
Yeah, I mean, funnel, of course, right, is priority number one, right? Especially going through the funnel, so with velocity and so forth. But when it comes to personalization, I think to answer your excellent question, right? But first, I think we need to define what does personalization mean. And I think personally that I feel treated personally when somebody wants to listen to me, tries to understand what I'm saying, what my needs are, and so forth, and also appreciates the fact that maybe it's still me, but then maybe I'm playing a different role as part of a different decision team, depending from situation A to situation B. To me, that's personalization, which really means, to your point, a lot of listening before talking, right? Make sure you understand, you listen and you understand. And not just a marketing issue or a sales issue, but I think in general, any business is not doing good enough listening.
And maybe just one example that's just struck me, which is quite not that long ago. I signed up for 2, like we all do, I signed up for 2 mindfulness apps, never used them. They probably cost me about £50 per year. And I kept getting these gentle messages saying, it only takes 5 minutes. You must have 5 minutes. Ignored them all, too busy for mindfulness. Yeah. And then somehow there was a detection that, I was between jobs. I was going through a job interview process. And I got a really nice piece of content delivered to me that just said, here's a video-based module around taking some of the stress out of that job interview process. So I thought, I need to listen to that. That's really pertinent to me right now with the issue that I'm up against. And the game is upped, isn't it, really, when you get marketing like that? Because
and I can see that from a B2C space like that. And it brings us on into that
example.
It brings us on to that point, though, which is how do you retain that human touch when you're personalizing in a B2B space and selling a B2B product or service? Because that requires a high level of monitoring and listening, a high level of digital, artificial intelligence, and all of those things that many of us don't have and will never have. The best B2B marketing organization in the world won't have enough money to do that at scale for all of its customers. So I guess, how do you drive that human touch, in a digital world in our B2B context? Any thoughts on where they've seen it done well, or in your teams you've been doing it well? Because at the end of the day, and I make this point regularly, buyers are still human beings, even if they're B2B buyers, even if they're CEOs. How do you see that evolving, this sort of humanization of what we're trying to do?
I think part of it comes down to a joined up front end experience. If for example marketing and sales are using the same data that they have on their customers and contributing to that same record, then it should follow that at the service point as well, insights there can be put back in, so that when they're next in the sales cycle, we know more about them, we know what they want, we're able to structure proactively deals around their needs, and I think that sort of thing makes a real difference, that sort of focus on the experiential side of it on behalf of the customer.
And I'm just wondering, how do you find that in a B2B space, that tipping point, that moment of
I think that
insight that and that enables you to
where you grab someone from inertia, really, and that sort of SaaS guild that we all talk about.
I mean, 2 things. Firstly, I've talked before about the fact that actually B2B buying is quite an emotional process because it's a high stakes game, right? You could lose your job, you could cost the company a lot of money. So it's actually, we sort of all assume that everyone goes into procurement RFP process, and actually a lot of the reason why there are a lot of rules around procurement is to try and take the emotion out of it. Because it is, at the end of the day, it is quite a high stakes and emotional decision. I think that one of the ways that you can do it at scale from a B2B perspective is be reflective about your existing customers. So if you have a perspective on what does a good customer look like, what does a great customer-client relationship look like, and then how can I look to find other organizations or people who are in a similar point, then we know that we can do this well, and therefore we know we've got something valuable to add, and we know how to talk to that group of people. The other thing you can do is to look at sort of situational marketing. So in my last company, we used to sell products to help with risk solutions. Now, because of increased regulation in financial services, it's sort of inevitable that people are going to get fined, right? So you know that that's a paradigm that's going to happen in the market that everyone is rightly concerned about, because everyone wants to comply with the regulation, and not just to not get fined, but to do the right thing. But you can have their marketing ready to go for that situational impact that might happen. So I think that there are ways you can kind of mimic some of that B2C stuff if you're really smart about who your customers are, who your clients are, and the environment and the dynamic that they're in as an industry or a market. I think you can achieve some of that.
And I think that would be certainly my view. I think you can do intelligent marketing, which that is. Is there a trigger that should I be ready for a response based on a specific trigger that I could deliver to a segment of my customers who I reasonably understand? Whether I think you can ever get down in a B2B sales environment for complex services to individualization and personalization, I think is always going to be much harder. And you
don't necessarily need to do it. I mean, actually, it's Marketo, I think, do quite a clever thing where they give you a pack that as a head of marketing director, to help you to talk to finance about making the investment into marketing automation. And I just kind of think that that's clever, because actually that is a conversation that is going to have to happen in any organization. And they've helped, and it's just genuinely helpful. It helps them, helps you. Yeah. But so you're right. It's not personalized in terms of knowing exactly where I am, but they know enough about the experience, and they know that I'm in the funnel because they know that because I'm talking to them. So then they give me something additive to help to close their pipeline and help me to get what I want quicker. Because at the end of the day, I think it's also important to remember the fact that B2B, you're buying something because you want it. It's sort of easy to get into a world we must be pushing. Yeah, it's not an impulse buy. You're buying something because you want it. And so actually, if you could help the buyer to facilitate that conversation internally, it doesn't matter whether it's got my name on it. But what matters is, do you understand what it's going to take me to get this thing that I want through procurement, through the CFO, whatever it is that I need to do? That's actually better than personalization, potentially.
Yes, and having a good enablement factor is really critical. That's where a lot of the evergreen content comes through as well. It's helping people to do their jobs better, helping people to succeed more in their Monday meetings or Friday stand-ups or whatever it is. As long as you can give them the tools, and you're putting yourself in the right place to help them out, help them make the right decisions.
But to your question, right, to understand where is the trigger, or where the trigger could be, right? So something that normally does not help us at all, right? But in this case, actually, it does a little bit, is the fact that the buyer's journey is non-linear. In fact, buyers units, because it's never a person, it's always a team, they keep coming back and forth with their decisions. If you have a campaign that is smart enough and trigger points to detect when and why the customer is potentially circling back, that gives you a lot of insights on what can be the non-written part, the pieces of their decision that are not in the RFP. So in the RFP, tends to be, at least in the B2B high tech, tends to be very, very technical, right? Specs and so forth. But then what is this customer really looking for in addition to some given speeds, bytes, features, whatever? Are they looking for something that is a very safe buy? Are they looking for something that is making sure you do not lose your job because of this decision? What else are you looking for, right? And if you analyze how they are circling back in the journey, very often gives you a lot of insights on that. So you can arrange your campaign with different pieces of content, or if you like, instead of having one narrative, to have a narrative that forks a couple of times through the journey, and depending on which direction the customer is taking, gives you quite a bit of information.
And do you think it's marketing's job in a bid situation then to be the person that bring that idea of the journey versus the linear RFP process? Is that where we can play?
I definitely think so. Yeah, especially if you are not dealing with one or very, very few customers, without going into the mass marketing, right? But if the communities become a bit broader, I think it is definitely marketing value add.
Okay. Well, and the challenge that you have though is when you're asking marketers to be buyer-oriented data visualizers, and then also execute a perfect trade show event, right? And that's a real challenge. And that's the challenge that most marketing leaders are facing today, which is you're still absolutely doing that kind of marketing because it's the right thing to do, but you're also being pushed to want to add value in a different way.